Which teams that really struggled last year could make that Cinderella run in 2023? Like Seattle was a really good example of that last year. Jacksonville, another example that went from a 2-win team to in a playoff spot.
Well, there's a formula, right? There has to be a formula. So the first thing has to be you get good quarterback play. And so when we spent this last offseason looking at Seattle, we said, Geno Smith, Drew Lock, where are they going? Like I kept saying all summer, like I don't know how you go on vacation if those are your two quarterbacks. Geno proved me completely wrong. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have somebody that you feel like is going. So the team that's going to go from Cinderella has got the quarterback plays at a higher level than the last year. That's one. Trevor Lawrence was horrible with Urban Meyer, played great. The second part, and I think this is most critical, is you have to find that you're playing against a weak division. Like, for example, the Carolina Panthers could be Cinderella. Yeah, Andy Dalton's got to play better throwing the football than Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Probably could. Or Bryce Young plays really great. Probably could. All right, now they play the AFC South. So there they've got Indy, they've got Tennessee, they've got Jacksonville, and they've got the Texans. You can grab 3 wins there. Plus the NFC South, where they play, isn't very good. Mm-hmm. So you could beat Tampa twice, maybe. Mm-hmm. There's no Tom Brady. There's no fear there. New Orleans, you split with New Orleans. Maybe you beat Atlanta twice. All of a sudden, you've got a chance to collect some wins here. That's the formula you have to look for. So where do you go wrong if you follow that formula? You get burnt by Seattle, who gets great quarterback play from Geno Smith, and you didn't anticipate it. But I think overall, when you look at scheduling and can they improve at quarterback, not that they improved at corner. Why did the Giants take a step? Because Daniel Jones played better, right? He played better, and that's why they went to their over total. And their schedule was favorable. They played the AFC South. Mm-hmm. So it's schedule, quarterback in that order.
With the NFC South, I think still relatively wide open, even though the Saints are the favorite with Derek Carr coming in. I know we talked earlier, like last week, about Carolina potentially being an interesting name in the division to win. So as you look at some of these numbers where to make the playoffs is a plus money price, to go over 7.5 wins, like that seems doable for a team that won 7 games a year ago and like had their coach fired midway throughout the season, now to a coaching staff and new pieces that really could improve.
Yeah, I definitely think Carolina has that Cinderella feel to them. They're good on defense. They'll have J.C. Horn for the entire year, Jackson the other corner for the entire year. Chin's a really good player. Burns is a very good rusher. They need to add another rusher if they can, if possible. They had a good draft a couple years that Matt Rule was there. Derek Brown took a giant step forward. They're collecting some players. Offensive line was greatly improved last year. Greatly improved. And I think Miles Sanders is a better runner full-time than Dante Foreman was, even though Foreman was good. Then they still have Chuba Hubbard on the backside, so they have him as a backup. They need more receivers, get that. But I truly believe this team in the NFC South is going to be tough to play. They have to come over this hurdle. One of the things I think that hurts Carolina is they play at home and they practice it at the stadium. So there's really no feel to going to the game. They don't have a home field advantage. It's weird. When you practice and play within your own arena, it's kind of hard. It's like not a different, like, okay, what's the difference between practice and a game? Really, there's nothing because we're here to practice, right? So it's like that sensation. Now, New England does the same thing because they're in the building and they've been vulnerable at home at times. But to me, I think that's one of the things Carolina's got to be much better at, playing at home.
Okay, let's look at another team. The Chicago Bears traded away the number 1 overall pick to Carolina, got some draft capital back and wide receiver DJ Moore to help support their young quarterback in Justin Fields. A lot of people, your guy Femi Abebefe, I know, thinks that Justin Fields can
sneak to the window every time.
Can take that
He's
step
over there
forward.
At the window betting. He wears his fake nose and glasses over at the window.
So home games for the Bears this year: Atlanta, Carolina, Denver, Vegas, Arizona. Road games, a couple tough ones. That game with Kansas City could be in Germany. They have the Chargers away, but New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and Washington. So just looking at some of their marquee games, what do you think about Chicago next year?
Well, I think it's going to be really hard for Chicago. Has to take a giant step forward to get to 8 wins. And why is that? Because when you look at their team, they were not only bad offensively. Remember, they only attempted 22 passes a game last year, and they led the league in point differential. They were minus 8.5, tied with Indianapolis. and they threw it only 22 times. You would think they would have had to thrown it over 30. They're scared to throw it with Fields. They didn't want to throw it. They knew it was going to be bad. And I think what really hurts them is the fact that they were not good in any area of their football team last year, especially the offensive and defensive fronts. Their offensive line was bad, and their defensive line was horrible. So I think it's going to be a huge step forward. I mean, they finished 32nd in points allowed, 28th in yards. I mean, there's no statistical category that they were any good anywhere. And the one area where they were really good was teams threw the ball. They were the second best team in facing passes last year. Think about that now. Why? Because it was so easy to run on them. Why would you risk turning the ball over? Until they fix that, I don't see how they get there.
So when I just on the surface was looking at this number, I thought it felt about right. But I have a little angle for you. And granted, we don't know the way that the order of these games are going to shake out on the schedule yet. But looking at past years for the Chicago Bears, last year they had a 3-4 start, then lose the rest of their games. Year before that, 3-2 start, ended up 6-11. 2020, 5-1 start, 8-8. 2019, 3-1 start, ended up 8-8. You have to go back to 2018 for them to have a winning season. So my thought process is, if maybe they get out the gates strong, win a couple of games, are over 500 in that early mark, maybe see what their live win total is and bet the under then, if it ticks up a game or two.
Yeah, I think I like that. I think you're probably better off betting the live in-season betting here. But here's what I would say. What happened to them was why they had a better start. They played that rain game against the Niners, which was ridiculous, right? It kind of was, the field kind of leveled the playing
That was fun
field.
for me in Survivor, Michael.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of people in Survivor, huh? I think Survivor's the hardest thing ever. I think it's the hardest thing ever. So I think, and then once people started to realize that they were only going to run the ball at quarterback with their running quarterback, that they were a six-back offense, people got a handle on them. Now, they played some close games, granted. They tough loss to Atlanta, but they had some games where it just got away from them, right? The best game of the year was when they beat the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots' lack of team speed in that game killed them. So, I just think, to me, this is a team that is so devoid of talent. It's going to take a while. And their scheme, especially defensively, is not complex enough to compensate for the lack. They're a zone drop, spot drop defense. And you've got to be really good up front to do good here. You got to be really good up front. And they're not really good up front yet.
Okay, let's talk about the New England Patriots, who you just mentioned. Their win total set at 7.5. They were an 8-9 team last season. Should be better. They have an actual offensive coordinator bringing Bill O'Brien over from Alabama. What do you think? I
think there's a formula here for them to improve to 9 wins, right? I do. I mean, if you look at it, the Raider game, they gave that game away. The Minnesota game, there's a bunch of games on their schedule that they played and didn't play typically in the model of Bill Belichick. They kind of got away from themselves. As bad as they were offensively, particularly in the offensive line, they had a chance to win some games here that just let it get away. Now, and I think they've got to fix that, obviously, with the change. The Raven game's another example. The Packer game, they had that thing in overtime with Bailey Zappi at quarterback. So the Bengal game's another one. They're driving the ball in the Bengal game, and they fumble. They got a chance to win that game. So they're not as far as you think. They've got to be able to get good play out of the quarterback. We think that can happen. We think if you're betting the over here, you're saying Mac Jones is going to play at least as good as he did as a rookie. Secondly, they're going to be better in the kicking game. They have to be better in the kicking game. They had punts block last year that killed them, especially against Minnesota. That's one of the reasons they lose to Minnesota. I just think, to me, they will be better as a complete team here, even though they haven't made a huge difference with their offseason acquisitions. They have they've improved their offensive line, and they're going to improve the quarterback, which is critical.
And I know the division is going to be tough because it always is, but has it almost gotten a little bit too much hype because you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers and Miami has made the efforts they did on the defensive end? Is it too much?
Well, I think, they beat the Jets twice, and they beat the Jets when the Jets were hot. Remember that game Zach Wilson couldn't do anything. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a different story. The Patriots' problem is they can't beat Buffalo. They haven't been able to really compete with Buffalo. The Dolphins give them trouble because of the rhythm passing game. That was a close game. The Dolphins, they turned the ball over in that game. It's the reason they lost that opener.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.